Hello, friends. My name is Charmaine from Two Witch Isle, and this is another Witch Vision. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about avoidance versus boundaries. I have been guilty in past of avoiding and calling it a boundary because it was just easier that way for me. I did not have the emotional capacity to handle triggers very well, so avoidance worked fabulous. However, in the long run, it is just like a quick fix and eventually just causes you heartache in the end. It's best to set the boundaries needed so that you don't need to avoid anything. So, I just want to go through some of the things that I discovered as I was unraveling the differences between avoidance and boundary setting. Avoiding a conversation or a person isn't a boundary. That's just avoiding. You have to have a conversation in order to set a boundary. Boundaries are intentionally set. Boundaries are empowered, they're intentional, and they are a response to something or someone. Avoidance is most often passive and it's reactive because, again, when you're triggered, you react. Avoidance can be part of a boundary strategy, but avoidance in and of itself is not a boundary itself. Okay, so we know what avoidance is and we know what boundaries are. So, what do unhealthy boundaries look like anyway? I wrote some stuff down. Disrespecting the values, beliefs, and opinions of others when you do not agree with them. Not saying no or not accepting when others say no. Feeling like you were responsible for other people's feelings and or happiness. I can tell you from experience, I have had very unhealthy boundaries at one time because I have always felt responsible for other people's feelings and happiness. I don't know why. Well, I know why now, but I didn't know why then. Now that I know why, it's a lot easier to not fall into those habits anymore. But I remember when each of those unhealthy boundaries I remember when each of those was exactly where I was in my life. It's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone. And if you're here, don't feel bad about it. Know that there's someplace to go. So, with that being said, when is a boundary controlling? Because sometimes I know in past I have felt like I've been controlled by others when in fact I wasn't controlled by anybody. That was just a limitation my mind set. So, when is a boundary controlling? Well, control is to make others what you want them to be. And a primary aggressor will never respect boundaries. They will always challenge them. So if you have somebody constantly challenging your boundaries, they may just be somebody that will never accept that you have boundaries in place. So, what do weak boundaries look like? Because I can tell you, I've been guilty of all of these as well. What what do weak boundaries look like? There's a struggle with telling others how they feel for fear of rejection or ridicule. That has been me many, many times in the past. They struggle with feeling burdened by how others perceive them due to the desire to people please. Whew, that one hits a hot spot. They strive to make everyone happy with their performance at work, in school, at home, etc. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounded like me all through my 20s and partially into my 30s. Um, I avoided most everything in my life that was difficult because, well, that was just my response. If it felt hard and it felt yucky, why do I want to do that? Let's just skip it. Let's do something else. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that I had to heal from in the face of trauma, I needed to feel that yuck because you have to sometimes. Finding your way through it is how you really heal through anything. So, with all of that, golly, what do healthy boundaries even look like? Well, I have 10 steps in setting healthy boundaries, and I wrote them down because I am not fabulous with memory. So here we go. What are those 10 steps to healthy boundaries? Clearly identify your boundary. Clearly identifying your boundary is so important because what you may need for a boundary may not even fall into another person's radar. So you have to be able to clearly articulate it. Two, understand why you need the boundary. It's important that you understand why you need the boundary so that you can properly articulate it. There have been many times in the past somebody has told me, "Oh, you should have, a firm boundary in place with this person." But, I didn't understand the need for the boundary until much later in life when other things fell apart and it was like, "Oh, now I understand why I needed to know why I needed a boundary in place." Understand why you need your boundaries. Three, be straightforward. Always be straightforward. Don't be a beat around the bush. Not everybody understands innuendos. Not everybody gets the gist. You have to straight up say what you want and what you don't want. Number four, don't apologize or give long explanations. They're not necessary, even though that's a really, really hard one for even me to adhere by. Number five, use a calm, polite voice and tone. Sometimes when we're talking about something that may have hurt us with the person that hurt us, our tone can get a little nasty. And it may be completely unintentional. It's just the hype of the emotion that's in you welling up. Well, guess what? That's a you problem. You should be able to take care of that by calming that emotion down and not allowing the unpolite voice and the unpolite tone to come out because we know you've been hurt. You're talking about being hurt, but it doesn't mean that you're getting hurt all over again. You're revisiting something in the past. Don't let it take you over again. Number six, start with tighter boundaries. Start with real tight boundaries and then let them lax when they show that they can adhere by your boundaries. Because if you let them just be lax, they won't take you seriously in the first place. Always start with tighter boundaries. Number seven, address boundary violations early. Boy, am I guilty of this. I'll set a boundary with somebody and then they'll violate that boundary. And I think to myself, well, I won't say anything this time because I'm sure they didn't mean what they said. The thing is they'll never know that they said it unless I tell them that they did, because otherwise they'll just let it flow right over. They won't even realize that they've crossed a boundary. So many times I've fallen prey to that one. Always address them early, right away. That way, it's uncomfortable in the short term, but in the long term for you, it's going to be more comfortable. Number eight, don't make it personal. You don't need to make it personal. We're all human beings and we all make mistakes. So don't make it personal. This has, uh, most of the time, everybody is caught in their own head and it isn't personal with anybody. It's just protecting yourself. Number nine, use a support system. There's always a support system. And if you're unsure if maybe somebody's intentions were impure or like ask. Just ask. There's no need to get all upset about it precursor. Jeez, oh Pete's. You don't need to get all upset about it beforehand. Find out first. If you have a support system, if you have somebody you trust, run it by them. Maybe your only support system is your therapist. Mine was for years. I would tell her everything because I needed that support to tell me to really help me find my healthy solutions through the struggle as I healed. Use your support system, very important. And number 10, trust your intuition. If your gut tells you something, 9 times out of 10, your gut's usually right. You know, I have been in many situations where I've been friends with somebody and something in my gut said, This is gonna be a hard friendship. If you if you don't set boundaries right now, this is gonna be a hard friendship." And it's happened to me again and again. And you know what? I'm still learning. It's a struggle. Like I said, addressing those boundary violations early always, kind of holds me up. Not apologizing or giving explanations, I have a hard time with that one because I guess I have it's that need to people please. God darn it. That's what it is. It's the need to please the people around me and not so much me. It's always forgetting that I have to put me first before I can really focus on others properly. Think about it. How many times have you avoided instead of setting a boundary? And how many times later have you thought to yourself, man, if I had only set the boundary, I would not be dealing with X, Y, and Z now. As always, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Until next time on The Witch's Cauldron, light and love.